If you had told me 15 years ago that the woman I married would someday destroy my reputation just to prove she could, I probably would have laughed it off. I was young, idealistic, and head over heels in love with someone I thought I knew better than anyone. Her name was Tanya. We met in high school, started dating junior year, and by the time we were both 23, we were married with 2 toddlers. People said we moved too fast. They weren't wrong. At first, everything felt like a dream. Tanya had this magnetic personality. She was charming, confident, and always knew what to say. I used to think that she had a way of lighting up a room, but looking back, I realized it wasn't light. It was control. She had to be the center of everything. Every decision, every conversation, every plan revolved around her. I didn't notice it early on because I loved her and I wanted to make things work. I told myself marriage was about compromise. But the compromises never seemed to go both ways. After our second child was born, Tanya began accusing me of being inattentive, distant, even unstable. I was juggling 2 jobs at the time and barely sleeping. But no matter what I did, she made it sound like I was falling short. She'd say I forgot to do something even when I hadn't. She'd twist innocent remarks into personal attacks. And I'd find myself apologizing for things I didn't even understand. Eventually, she suggested I see a therapist, said she was worried about my stress levels and mental health. I went, more for her peace of mind than mine, and the therapist confirmed I was dealing with burnout and some anxiety. Nothing major. But Tanya latched onto that label like it gave her ammunition. I didn't realize then that she was already building her case. When things finally blew up between us, I didn't even see it coming. We had an argument about something stupid, something about how I folded the laundry, and she completely lost it. The next day, she took the kids to her mother's and served me divorce papers. I thought we'd work it out eventually. I was wrong. She filed for full custody, citing my mental instability as the reason. She brought up my therapy sessions, claimed I'd had emotional breakdowns, even brought in character witnesses from her side of the family who painted me as a ticking time bomb. I barely got a word in. I tried to fight it, but the court didn't listen. They gave her sole custody and gave me supervised visitation twice a month. And that was it. My whole world, the only thing I ever really cared about, was gone in a courtroom that saw me as a danger instead of a dad. I was labeled mentally unfit, a risk. And the worst part, Tanya looked proud, as if she'd won a battle that only she was fighting. People I thought were friends stopped talking to me. A few mutuals from our high school days reached out at first, saying they were shocked. But once Tanya's version of the story started spreading, I was treated like a leper. I even lost a job opportunity because a former co-worker was friends with Tanya. It was like I wasn't just being punished by the system, I was being erased from my own life. I remember the first time I saw my daughter after the court ruling. She was 5. She clung to her mother as if I was a stranger. She didn't run to me, didn't smile. She just looked at me like I didn't belong in the room. And my son, who was barely 3 at the time, just sat on the floor playing with a truck, barely acknowledging me. That broke me more than anything. I wanted to scream, to grab them, hug them, tell them I never wanted any of this. But instead, I just knelt down and tried to talk to them. I asked them how school was, what shows they were watching, and if they liked the new toys their mom got them. I tried to be calm, I tried to be fun, but it felt like I was trying to win back affection that shouldn't have been lost in the first place. After a few visits, my daughter started talking more. She told me things, small things, like how mommy was always tired or how she didn't like eating dinner alone, but I couldn't act on it. The moment I brought up concerns in court, Tanya called it manipulation. She told the judge I was putting ideas in our kids' heads to make her look bad. The judge warned me to watch my language around the children. I stopped talking about anything that could be considered negative. I learned how to tiptoe around every conversation. I was terrified that if I said the wrong thing, she'd cut me off completely. Meanwhile, Tanya kept posting smiling pictures with the kids on social media, crafting this perfect image of single motherhood and triumph. People applauded her strength. I got pity stares, or worse, silence. And yet, I still held on to hope. I still believed somehow that my kids would see the truth one day. That if I kept showing up, every visit, every call, every birthday, they'd know I never gave up on them. Update 1. It wasn't even a year after the custody ruling when Tanya started slipping. At first, it came in conversations with my daughter. She mentioned that Tanya was too tired to pick her up from a birthday party and that a neighbor had to bring her home. Another time, my son talked about how they ate cereal for dinner 3 nights in a row. He didn't say it to complain. He said it like it was normal, like that's just how things were now. I wanted to step in. I wanted to call someone. But after the judge's warning, I knew anything I did could backfire. So I documented everything quietly, every odd comment, every missed appointment, every time Tanya flaked on a school event and I had to step in last minute. I kept records, I kept photos, I even kept copies of the emails from the school when Tanya forgot to sign field trip forms or didn't respond to parent-teacher meeting notices. But none of that prepared me for what came next. I got a phone call from the school. They asked why no one had picked up the kids. I was confused. It wasn't my visitation day. I told them to call Tanya. The receptionist said they had 3 times. No answer. I dropped everything, drove across town like my car was on fire. When I arrived, my son was crying in the front office. My daughter looked tired, slumped in a chair with her backpack at her feet. That was the first time I got a real call to action. I took them home with me. I tried reaching Tanya all night. Calls, texts, voicemails, nothing. Not a single response. I figured maybe she had an emergency. Maybe she was in the hospital. The worry in me was still stronger than the anger. But the next morning, she posted pictures from a party in another city, dressed up, drink in hand, tagging friends I'd never heard of. She hadn't forgotten. She just didn't care. I sent that post to my lawyer right away, and that was the beginning of a very long, bitter custody battle all over again. But this time, I had proof, real proof. Not assumptions, not speculation. I had receipts. And Tanya, she barely showed up to defend herself. At one point, she even told the court she was overwhelmed and needed a break. A break from parenting, a break from responsibilities, a break from the very children she'd weaponized to crush me. The court didn't look too kindly on that. They finally reversed the order. I was granted full custody. It should have been a moment of triumph, but all I felt was numb. Because this wasn't about winning. It wasn't a game. These were my kids, and they had already lost too much. At first, they were confused. They kept asking when they were going back to mommy's. I didn't know how to answer. I tried to keep things gentle. I told them that mommy needed some time and that they were going to stay with me for a while. My daughter cried the first night. My son asked if he'd done something wrong, and that broke me all over again. But slowly, very slowly, things started to shift. They got used to the new routine. They started opening up more. I saw flashes of the personalities I thought had been buried under all the tension and instability. My daughter started drawing again. My son played more happily. We had quiet dinners. We had loud game nights. We had peace. I wish I could say Tanya tried to fight harder, but she didn't. She disappeared the same way she had from that school pickup, without explanation, without apology. The kids stopped asking about her eventually, and I stopped bringing her up. Years passed. My daughter graduated from high school with honors. My son was accepted into his dream program at a local college. We rebuilt a life, one that made sense, one that felt real. They both have careers now. My daughter is getting married soon. My son got married 2 years ago and now has a son of his own. And then, out of nowhere, Tanya showed up again. It was a casual Saturday morning. I had just gotten back from a grocery run when my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a message popped up. It was Tanya. She sounded different, tired. Her voice was slower than I remembered. She said she wanted to talk, that she missed the kids, that she had made mistakes and hoped we could meet. I didn't answer. I let the kids decide. My daughter wanted nothing to do with her. My son said he might want to hear her out, maybe, but in the end he didn't go. They both said the same thing in different ways. She left when they needed her, and no amount of apologies could fix that. Still, she kept calling. She left more voicemails. She said she was lonely, that she'd lost everything, that her friends were gone, her savings dried up, and her health was failing. She was staying at a retirement home that she couldn't afford. She had no one. I listened. I never responded because I didn't owe her any sympathy. Not after what she did, not after what she took from me, from us. I used to dream about this moment, about her coming back, begging for forgiveness, but when it finally happened, there was no joy, no sense of victory, just silence, just space between who we used to be and who we'd become. The kids, they never replied either. They didn't need revenge. They just needed distance. And Tanya, well, she's still out there wondering how things slipped so far, wondering how the people she tried to control ended up stronger without her, wondering how a woman once so proud, so in charge, could end up alone in a retirement home asking questions that no one wants to answer. She calls it bad luck. We call it consequences. Update 2. I used to believe that kids forget, that maybe with enough time, enough quiet, enough good memories layered over the bad ones, they would let go of what they didn't understand. But I was wrong. Kids don't forget. They carry it silently, carefully, sometimes not even realizing they're holding it until it bubbles up again in ways you don't expect. It was a summer evening when my daughter asked if she could go through some of the old storage boxes in the garage. She's 30 now, confident, strong, and sharp in ways I was proud of. I told her to go ahead and left her to it, assuming she was hunting for childhood photos or maybe her old art supplies. An hour later, she came inside with a dusty folder in her hand. She said she'd found Tanya's court files, the ones I had buried at the bottom of a box years ago. At first, she just asked simple things. What did that therapist's letter mean? Why did the judge make the decisions he did? And was I really evaluated for mental instability? I didn't lie. I couldn't. I explained that her mother had hired someone who twisted words and planted doubt, that she built a narrative that made me look unhinged. I told her how hard I fought to stay present in their lives and how when Tanya finally walked away, it wasn't because she was forced to, it was because she wanted to. She didn't say much, just nodded slowly and asked to keep the file with her. That was the first time I realized how seriously she took everything. Later that week, my son, 27 now and far more emotionally perceptive than most men his age, sat beside me while I was watching TV. He asked if it was true that Tanya used to leave them alone for hours. I told him yes, but reminded him I always tried to be there the moment I knew something was wrong. He said he remembered once sitting at the window and watching for her car for so long that he fell asleep on the floor. He said he didn't cry because he knew crying wouldn't bring her back any faster. That image stuck with me. My boy, couple of years old, curled up near a window like a stray cat, waiting for a mother who never showed. It wasn't fair. It had never been fair. And yet neither of them had ever truly lashed out at her. Not when she disappeared, not when she tried to sneak back into their lives like nothing had happened. They had stayed silent. Cold, yes. Distant, definitely, but never angry until now. What I didn't know was that Tanya had been messaging them directly, sending long-winded emails about regrets, about how life had humbled her. She said she didn't expect forgiveness, only a chance to start fresh now that she had grown. My daughter told me she ignored them at first, but something in her snapped when Tanya sent a message implying she had done her best. She told me she read that line 3 times and felt sick. She said she didn't know what scared her more, Tanya's delusion or the thought that she might believe it. So she responded, not with cruelty, not with name-calling, just a simple breakdown of facts, what she remembered and how she felt, how Tanya's abandonment had shaped her views of trust, relationships, motherhood. She sent screenshots of the text Tanya left, the photos she had posted while supposedly too overwhelmed to pick them up from school, and a link to the judge's ruling reversing the custody order. She ended the email by saying that Tanya could live the rest of her life pretending she had done her best, but they would never believe it. That was the first reply Tanya ever got, and it broke her. The next morning, she showed up at my house. I hadn't seen her in years. Her hair had gone fully grey, her face thinner, her voice quieter. She looked like someone who'd lost every ounce of control but hadn't yet accepted it. She asked to speak to the kids. I told her they didn't live with me. She said she just wanted 5 minutes, and I told her that 5 minutes couldn't undo anything. And that's when she cried. Not the performative, high-drama tears she used to weaponize. These were different, hollow, aimless. She said she didn't understand why they hated her so much. She said she gave them everything she had. I asked her if she really believed that. I asked if she even remembered the day she left them at school while she went drinking in another city. She went quiet. Eventually, she said she was lonely and sick, that she just wanted to reconnect before it was too late. I told her the truth. The kids didn't hate her. They pitied her. They didn't want revenge. They wanted peace. And that peace came from distance, from letting go, from not giving someone access to hurt you again. I said they weren't interested in building a bridge from burned wood. She left after that. No threats, no texts, just silence again. A week later, my daughter told me they had found Tanya's social media account. It was filled with inspirational quotes, blurry pictures of sunsets, and long, rambling posts about how her children had been brainwashed against her. She was clearly still spinning her own story, even if no one was listening anymore. My son said she looked like someone writing love letters to a ghost. They didn't comment on the posts. They didn't engage. They didn't need to. They were busy with their lives, spouses, children, friends, futures that Tanya would never be a part of. My daughter said something then that stuck with me. She said Tanya always wanted to be the hero in everyone's story, but the thing about being a hero is that you actually have to show up. Update 3. There were days when I thought maybe this was the end of it. Tanya had vanished again off social media, out of our heads for the most part. The kids were healing in their own ways. I had started sleeping through the night again. For a long time, I lived in fear that she'd pop back up, dragging some new chaos with her. But months went by, then a full year. And then she showed up in the local news. It was a small piece, barely a blip in the community section. An old neighbor of hers had reported a welfare concern. Tanya had been found holed up in a dingy rental in the outskirts of town. No power, no heat, no clear signs of employment or medical care. The article used vague language, but it was clear enough. She was struggling, alone, not doing well. I showed the paper to my daughter later that evening. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she asked if it was wrong that she didn't feel bad. I told her it wasn't. She had nothing to feel guilty about. Sympathy wasn't owed, especially not to someone who had walked away when it mattered most. But what I didn't expect was the letter. It arrived 2 weeks after the article, not typed, handwritten, shaky, like it had been done in a hurry or with trembling hands. Tanya said she was sorry, that she had lost everything, and that she needed help. She didn't ask to come home, not exactly, but she hinted. She talked about how the world felt colder now, how the only family she had was the one she'd pushed away, and how maybe now that things had calmed, we could revisit the idea of rebuilding, of healing. We were already in our mid-50s. What rebuilding? My daughter read it over my shoulder, and then she asked if she could be the one to reply. She wrote with a kind of clarity that broke my heart. No anger, no bitterness, just firm lines drawn in ink. She reminded Tanya that she had made her choices, that people begged her to do better, to be present, to love without conditions, and she ignored every single one of them. She said that showing up only when you have nothing left isn't love, it's convenience. And then she added something I'll never forget. She said that forgiveness was earned, not begged for when all else failed. And she wasn't interested in earning someone back who had never tried to earn her. She mailed the letter and then blocked Tanya's last known number. That was the final nail. What followed was quiet for a while, until Tanya's sister called me one morning. We hadn't spoken in years. She said she wasn't calling to defend Tanya, just to let me know what was going on. Apparently, Tanya had started talking to a few old friends, trying to piece together a place to stay. She spun a new story, one where I had manipulated the kids, poisoned them against her, and made up lies about her abandonment. But her sister knew better. She said she remembered the nights Tanya didn't come home. The times I showed up at her place with the kids, desperate for someone to take them in because Tanya hadn't answered her phone in days and I had to work. She said she was sorry, truly sorry, for staying out of it back then. I told her it was okay, that it wasn't her mess to fix. But I'll admit, part of me appreciated the call more than I let on. Then came the retirement home, not one of the nice ones. This place was underfunded, crowded, and sad in a way that clings to the air like mildew. Tanya had landed there a few months later after being evicted. Her health was deteriorating. No spouse, no siblings willing to take her in, no kids visiting, no visitors at all. I didn't tell the kids right away. I wrestled with the idea whether they should know, whether it would even matter. And in the end, I did tell them. Over dinner one night, I said Tanya wasn't doing well, that she was living out the end of her days the same way she'd lived most of her life, with nobody around to witness it. My son didn't say a word, just kept eating slowly, like I hadn't said anything at all. But my daughter looked up and said that it made sense, that the choices we make always find a way of coming back, even if it takes years. She asked if I ever planned to visit her. I said no, and I meant it. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't hate. It was simply the decision to stop participating in a cycle that had already taken too long. I heard from her sister. Again, months later, Tanya had tried to reach out to some old contacts, asking for help with rent before the home. No one responded. She said Tanya had finally realized what it meant to be truly alone. The kids and I never discussed her again after that. It was done. Her story in our lives was over. But the pain she left behind still rippled. Even now, when my kids accomplish something, promotion, get a new job, get married, they do it without her. And I see the flicker in their eyes, the tiny, silent ache of knowing the one who should have cared didn't show up. That ache doesn't go away, but it teaches you to show up for people, to speak love when you have it, to never disappear when you're needed. And it taught them to value their own worth, to understand that real love never asks for proof of loyalty before offering any back. I may have lost a lot when Tanya walked away, but I got something better in the end. Children who grew up kind, resilient, and unshakably loyal. And she got what she gave. Nothing. Update 4. This is just something from the past I wanted to share. When my son turned 18 and started working right after high school, he said he didn't feel like waiting anymore. He'd already lost enough time, and maybe he was right. I convinced him to go to university because I knew there was a program he had his eye on. He worked his way up fast, saved every penny, and when he turned 25, he proposed to a girl I'd known since he was 16. She was kind, steady, the sort of person who brought calm into a room just by being in it. The kind of girl his mother never had the patience to be. When they got engaged, he didn't talk about who he would or wouldn't invite. I stayed out of it and gave him space and helped where I could. But about 2 months before the wedding, he came to me and asked if I still had a working number for Tanya. I did. And I asked him if he was sure. He said yes. He wasn't doing it for her. He was doing it for himself. He didn't want to look back and wonder what would have happened if he hadn't at least tried. So I sent her the invitation. No letter, no message, just the formal card. We even gave her an RSVP number, but weeks passed and the number stayed unused. The wedding came and went without a single word from her. No phone call, no card in the mail, not even a voicemail. He never said anything about it, not during the reception, not when he danced with his new wife, not even when he hugged me afterward. But when I got home that night, I found the invitation lying on the hallway table. It had been returned to sender, unopened. He must have received it from the mailbox himself. I didn't ask questions. There was nothing more to say. The next year, they had a baby boy. It wasn't a complicated pregnancy, no drama, just nerves and excitement, the kind you only feel when it's your first. I was in the delivery room when he cut the cord. I held my grandson after his parents. It was the kind of moment that stays with you forever. And Tanya? Still silent. We didn't send her anything that time. No message, no card. Not because we were angry, but because it felt pointless. My son said he wouldn't let someone be a grandparent who couldn't even manage to be a mother. She could have texted, could have sent a single word, but she didn't. By the time our daughter got engaged, Tanya had fully faded into the background of our lives. She was like an old photograph we didn't hang on the wall anymore, something you remembered from time to time but didn't miss. When my daughter was planning her wedding, she didn't even bring up her mom, not once. I thought maybe she was avoiding the topic, so a week before the final guest list was due, I gently asked if she wanted to include Tanya, and she said no, flatly, no hesitation. She told me she didn't want to look into the crowd on the most important day of her life and see a stranger pretending she still had a place in it. She said that if people ask where her mother is, she'll say the truth. Her mother had other priorities. The wedding was beautiful, small, peaceful, full of laughter and dancing. I watched my daughter walk down the aisle on her own, head high, eyes dry, strong. She didn't look around for anyone. She didn't falter. She just kept walking, steady, like someone who had made peace with all the years that came before. She had insisted that I take her hand halfway down the aisle. We didn't send Tanya pictures. She could find them on social media if she cared enough to look. The truth is, somewhere down the line, we stopped hoping for an apology or a reconciliation or even basic acknowledgement. She was gone, and eventually it stopped hurting. My son's boy is 4 now. He calls me Pop. He thinks I'm the strongest man in the world because I can carry him on my shoulders and open pickle jars on the first try. He doesn't know Tanya exists. One day he might ask. One day we might explain. But for now, he's safe. He's surrounded by people who show up, who hug him tightly, who clap the loudest when he builds a Lego tower or says something silly. That's what matters. I sometimes wonder what Tanya tells herself at night. If she believes her own stories, if she rewrites the past in her head to soften the edges, maybe she thinks we were cruel, maybe she believes we turned the kids against her. But deep down, I think she knows. She knows she was invited and didn't come. She knows she had chances and walked away from every single one. She knows the reason there are no phone calls, no visits, no birthday cards, because the bridge she burned was never rebuilt, not even once. And now she's alone. Not because we pushed her out, but because she never chose to stay in. There's one picture I keep in my drawer. It's the three of us, me and the kids, sitting on the couch just days after she left. We're tired. We look broken, but we're together. And that was the start of everything. Because we did rebuild. We laughed again. We loved again. We filled the house with warmth and memories, and we did it without her. The seats she left empty, we never needed them filled. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.